Can we all hear okay?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
not
cool.
not that it's a huge group, but that's okay. So just before I begin, I always like to let the group know that going to be talking about depression, anxiety, schizoaffective disorder, suicide. So they're pretty heavy topics. And if anyone needs to step out and away while I'm talking, that's perfectly okay. I'm not going to think anything less of you because, as I said, they're reasonable topics. So to start off with, so should be right, mate. And it's a classic Aussie saying that we've all heard, we've maybe all even said, which basically means that, whatever's going on is going to rectify itself in time. And Aussie blokes love to say it. I'm definitely guilty of that one myself. And when it comes to men's mental health, that's definitely not the case. So in 2019, there were 3,300 deaths by suicide. And for blokes, it was 2,500 of that number. So that's massive. In the age ranges of 15 to 44, suicide is the leading cause of death in Australia. And blokes are statistically 3 to 4 times more likely to die by suicide than the females. Interestingly enough, I did talk to my GP about this one time, and my psychologist, and actually asked, why is that? Why is there such a huge divide? And part of it is, as blokes, we tend to be a bit more violent when we do things. And so we're a little bit more successful. Not that we really should be putting a hand up and say, yay, us, but that's something to think about. So in Australia, about 65,000 Australians attempt suicide each year, and that's where I fall into the numbers. So a little bit about myself. So I grew up in a semi-rural town, Tinalba Bay, up in Port Stephens, near Newcastle, we'll say. And I'm, I'm the first of 3 children. So I hold the title of eldest, who gets stuck in the middle seat when he was younger, and end up with a brother sleeping on my shoulder here and a sister sleeping on a shoulder here. And I had a pretty good life, actually, from what I can remember and everything I've been told. The wheels fell off for me when I was 12, and that was because we lost my maternal grandfather. And I took it really hard, and it really hit me. It hit me like a freight train. And I had the depressive episodes for months and months and months. I got diagnosed with anxiety and depression. I'd have anxiety attacks so bad that I would actually pass out. So it was so bad, the brain would work it up so badly, I'd actually just collapse wherever I was, and I'd be out for a couple of minutes. That went on. I spent some time in hospital doing random tests. They were looking for epilepsy and all those sort of things. Couldn't find anything. And then my mum asked one of the doctors, funnily enough, could it be depression? And the doctor laughed at her. I remember it clear as day. The doctor laughed and said, "Oh no, kids his age don't get depression." I wish that was the case. I really do. Went along, kept going okay, started work. And then in my early 20s, the wheels just fell straight off. There's no even gradual. I just descended one day into absolute chaos. And I had numerous suicide attempts. What would happen with me is the schizoaffective would kick in. I'd start seeing and hearing things. And then I'd end up swallowing every tablet I had in the house. So not the best thing. And just as an FYI for anyone, please don't ever do that, because liquid charcoal is one of the foulest creations I've ever come across. Please don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. It's not worth it. But I was a little bit more successful one time, and I'd taken Panadol, which obviously is one of the worst ones because it kills your liver. And then, from what I've heard, going out from liver failure is not one of the most pleasant things you're going to want. So I was in the ICU, and I was hooked up to all the monitors and everything. And I overheard a conversation between a nurse and an older patient, and he was saying that he didn't want to die and he wasn't ready to go. And it really dawned on me at that point in time. It was like, okay, so here I am in a room full of people that are clinging to life, whatever is going on with them. And I was the complete opposite, and I was trying to check out. And it just, as I said, it really hit me hard. And I made the resolution at that point that was going to be it. No matter how hard it was, I was going to stop trying to take my own life and just live. So it took a few years, lots of therapy, to sort of get to a good place. I got married, and I had 3 kids to my first wife, and you know, it was going on well. Moved to Melbourne in 2006, and I was working for an IT company. So I'm a computer guy by trade. So just so everyone knows, so you know, I do software development and internet engineering, all those fun things. And so I moved down there to start a web hosting company with some friends. And so I moved down there with my wife, who was, you know, 7 months pregnant. So that was a journey in itself. You know, we built that company up and we sold that one off. And then I went to work for a few other companies, all the while managing my mental health. So one of the things I'm very good at is putting on a face. I don't know about you blokes, but I can make it seem like there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm good. You know, it's called compartmentalization, and it's basically, I don't know if anyone's a big horror fan here or watched, you know, Dr. Sleep or The Shining. You know, it's like Danny Torrance shoving everything evil into a box and then cramming it to the side. Well, that's what I do when I'm working. I can cram it to the side, you know, forget what's going on, and keep going. And so we were doing that. I started up a second company with some mates again, and turned that into a multi-million-dollar business, which I'm quite proud of. But in 2015, I was feeling this big disconnect with what I was actually doing. You know, IT had been my life for so long, but all of a sudden, you know, we'd been putting staff on. So I was gradually losing responsibilities, and I was finding I didn't really like that so much. And so in 2015, I actually signed up to do the Inca Trail in Peru on behalf of the Leukaemia Foundation, raising funds for blood cancer. And so 2016 came along, May, and we jetted off to Peru. And so we had a couple of days there to acclimatise in Cusco because it's quite a high elevation. And then we started out on the trek, and we, you know, day one was pretty simple. Wasn't anything too much. We started after lunch, you know, trekked about 5 or 6 Ks, and stopped for the night. And we were camped opposite some ruins. But it was the second day that would prove to be the hardest for me. We were going along on the second day, and it was getting harder and harder and harder. And at that time, I was about 120 kilos. So I was still carrying quite a lot of weight at that point. We got to about midday, and I was just knackered, so exhausted. I had a little bit of altitude sickness and generally was feeling quite sorry for myself at that point. You know, and the anxiety's in the back there going, you can't do this, you can't do this. What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop. And it was actually the leader of the team actually who pulled me to the side and was just talking to me. And he said, Craig, I've seen bigger and heavier people complete the Inca Trail, and I believe in you, you can do this. Now that's the first time anyone outside of my family has actually ever said to me they believed in me. Because one of the things I find with my anxiety, and I don't know about you guys, you doubt yourself a lot. Am I worth it? You know, am I any good? Like, who am I? You know, as an example, it's kind of like that imposter syndrome, isn't it? Like, who am I to be up here talking to you guys about mental health when I have trouble even with mine? But as my GP said to me, you know, that actually makes you more authentic, more real. People can relate with you. You know, you're not saying, hey, I got over my depression, you can too. You're saying it's a hard slog and it's going to take a lot of work to do. And so anyway, I was recharged after the tour guide said that to me. And so I powered on and I got through day 2. Camped overnight. It was fantastic. But they had a new game plan for me on day 3, which was they were going to keep me at the front of the pack. So me and the guide started a little bit earlier than the rest of the group, and we set off, going right up some stairs like that. And so they kept me ahead most of the time. And that worked up until probably it must have been about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon on day 3. And the rest of the team had gone ahead because I was just so exhausted. It was raining, I was wet, doubting myself again, but I kept pushing on, and eventually I trudged into camp on day 3 at 7 o'clock at night when everyone had been there since 5:30. So there was a bit of a gap there in the time. And so when I woke though, I got quite, it was quite a shock because we were actually camping above the clouds. So we were up here and we had the clouds sort of down here. So that was quite an amazing thing. And then, so finished off, started day 4. And then, we had lunch and said goodbye to our team and that, because it was basically the last day and we were going to be at Machu Picchu. And then the last test for me was what they affectionately call the Gringo Killer stairs. And basically these things are like that. They're terrible. Like, they're really small. And I had no real option, but I just went up on my hands and knees because I thought, bugger it. As long as I get to the top, who cares? It's, doesn't matter if it doesn't look that impressive. And then eventually we made it to the sundial at Machu Picchu, and it was just such an amazing feeling to realize that I was actually capable of far, far more than I'd actually thought of myself before. I'd always been the techo, the one that hides out in the cave in the back. You don't show the troll to customers, you keep him hidden. And so, that was, that made me realize, how much more I could do with my life and, what I wanted to achieve. So, we got back to Cusco after that, and I was sitting down and my depression hit again. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I've just done this amazing thing, the most amazing place I've ever seen in my life, done the most physical challenge. Why am I down all of a sudden? It didn't really make sense to me. And the guide came over to me and we were talking, and he said, "Oh, I know what you're feeling." And I'm like, "Okay, how does he know how I'm feeling?" He said, "You're feeling a bit empty now, aren't you? And like, what's next?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, that's why it is. You've had this huge challenge, you've completed it, you've gone ahead and done it. What's next for you? What's Craig going to do now? That's the feeling you've got right now. And so it was an amazing, it was like, okay, all right, very, I've got to work on that. So anyway, we got home, went back to work, and that disconnect was still there. I still didn't feel connected to, the business that I'd spent years and years and years building. I didn't feel like I belonged anymore. So it took about a year, but I decided I was actually going to finish up with the company, and I was going to do my own thing. And so I started trying to figure out what was I actually going to do with my life now. What was going to give me purpose? And I saw a mentor now up on stage speaking at a Melbourne's Entrepreneurs Conference in 2017, and he's amazing. When he presents, it's just so, you get so engaged with him. And I was talking to him, and he said, "Oh, maybe you can do something about mental health, because that's something you know a lot about. You've managed your own illness over all these years. So why not something like that?" So I went and did something that was completely out of the park for me, because I usually can't stand up and talk in front of groups. The social anxiety gets me every single time. It strikes. It's quite, you've got to push yourself really hard to get through it. But I went and did a speakers boot camp in Sydney, learning how to actually present on stage. And, the first day was a write-off. I think I got 10 seconds, because they kind of just pulled it on us and said, "Hey, you're going up on stage in 3 minutes," or whatever it is, to say something for 60 seconds. And so, yeah, that the first day was a write-off. Couldn't get much out of it. The second day was pretty good, but I started to have problems with seeing and hearing things again, because when I'm under a lot of stress, the schizoaffective disorder plays up with me. So I start to get the visual and audio hallucinations. And I was seeing all this show, as I call it, and they said it's okay. They calmed me down, got up on stage for about 2.5 minutes to talk, which I thought was pretty good at that time for me, considering, normally I don't talk in front of more than 2 or 3 people at once. And the third day, I nailed it in my own point of view. I got up and I was able to present for 6 minutes, which was, a huge achievement for me, especially because I've never really been one to get up and actually talk about it. So that boot camp really helped cement what I wanted to do, which was, the help with the mental health. So last year, I actually wrote my first book, Conquer Your Inner Demons, and I've got that published now, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I'm also starting a business called Destination Inspiration. And the idea behind that is I want to take men on these same sort of physical journey that I underwent with the Inca Trail, because when you finish it, you have so much power. You've got so much belief in yourself. So take that and actually then use it to do something amazing with your life. Maybe you're not happy with your work. Maybe, you're not happy with home life. There's changes you want to make. We can use, the momentum, as I call it, from the trek to actually help affect those changes that you want to make in your life. So that's one thing I'm looking at, and I've actually got I'm trying to aim for May next year to actually go do the Leukaemia Trail in the Northern Territory. So I want to take a group of blokes on to do the Leukaemia Trail, because I found, as I said, the Inca Trail was instrumental in my journey, and I think it would help others as well. Great. You've sort of heard my story and everything. So in my book, I go through obviously quite a number of things that I think help mental health. And I'm going to go through the top 3 that I think are pretty good. So the first one is a positive mindset. Now you're probably also thinking, oh my God, what the, if someone else tells me to be positive once more, I'm going to go punch them in the nose. But it's more about, I just find I'm naturally, so in my book, I talk about the 2 mind syndrome, a positive and a negative portion of your brain. And I find I tend to lean, unfortunately, towards the negative. I'll see the negative side of a situation far quicker than I'll see the positive of a situation. So it's just about being mindful of that and saying to yourself, okay, is there anything good? And sometimes there's not. Sometimes the situation just sucks. Let's be honest. There's no silver lining. There's no, this came to that. No, it sucks, And so, trying to maintain, some form of positive outlook, I find is quite important. And that's what I do myself. When I'm feeling really down on that, I just try and keep in mind that it's just another day. If I have a down day, okay, for me, I'll just write it out. That's what I do. And I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and it's a new day for me. So I forget yesterday as much as I can and say, right, how do I feel today? And keep moving on. So positive mindset is one of them. Diet is one that I've struggled with for a long time. I do believe it's really important to have a good diet. Not all the sugary stuff and that. I've just come out from probably a 3 to 4 month depressive episode. I was down for quite a while. So don't think that I've got it all sorted out just because I'm standing up here, because I don't. I'm just like you guys. I'm still working things out as I go, learning. I just like to get up to inspire people to trying to live a better life. But yes, a diet is an important one. So, trying to cut out the sugars and all the processed stuff and eating your veggies. You know, it's nothing that your doctor won't tell you, but it's just I find it's an important one. And the last one is obviously connected to the treks, but it's actual exercise. You know, actually getting some physical activity into life. I find if I go for a walk or I go for a swim, I usually feel much better at the end of it. It doesn't last a long time. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Sometimes it only lasts a couple of hours, but I'll take what I can get. So the physical exercise is also a good way of getting helping your mental health. There's obviously more